Welcome back to the Personal Transformation Experience podcast. It's been a while. We've been busy.
Yeah.
We took a 4-week hiatus and we are back. This week's podcast title is Live Authentically Without Fear. And it just so happens that that was the intention that I said at the end of a 3-day silent meditation retreat that we attended last weekend. It was extremely impactful for me. It was the very first time that I had endured silence for that period of time. It was from Thursday at 7 p.m. until almost 10 a.m. the following Sunday. So I know it was impactful for you as well, though.
It was intense. It was intense. My favorite part was the silence. The introvert that I am, I really enjoyed not having to think about what to say or not having to talk and not having to listen other than whatever was going on in my own head. So I love that about it. I feel like it was cleansing in a sense where you didn't have to really, there was no demands.
Right.
How often do we get through life and we could spend how many hours? 72 hours with no demands, no phones, no screens, no talking, meals served, cooked and served, and you didn't have to speak. You didn't have to think about anything except meditate and go inside and start working from the inside out, really being able to focus. That was incredible for me. And it was an amazing experience. It was very intense. It wasn't easy. Dealing with the thoughts that come up in your head. But I wouldn't change anything. It took me about 4 days to land when I got home. But it was well worth everything.
And we were the only couple there. And not only were we the only couple there, but we shared a room, even though we didn't speak to each other and barely looked at each other. And we slept in separate beds. We shared a bathroom, but not at the same time. So, I mean, we worked around each other.
Yeah, well, we kind of talked about how we were going to deal with all that ahead of time. What was the hardest thing for you?
Communicating that I needed to go into the bathroom, right? Because I had a gesture to you, right? I mean, you weren't even, the whole idea is that you don't even make eye contact with people in silent meditation. So you're doing everything mindfully and you're not connecting with other people. So it's very hard to avoid connection, totality. And in totality, because even like they said during the instruction period Thursday night, we could not let the door slam on somebody behind us. We weren't to turn around and look at the person and hold the door until they get there.
Right.
So we were supposed to gently leave the door and then go forward. And we're not supposed to say thank you to anyone for holding the door open and all those things.
Yeah.
So to me, those minor connections that we make with other people every day, especially with you, were hard to avoid.
They were hard to avoid. And I think probably next time we just have separate rooms.
Well, that's what most people do.
Most people have separate rooms. I didn't think it would be a big deal. I get it now. The hardest thing for me was the affection. I couldn't touch you or get a hug from you. So I actually did come in for hugs here and there because I just was struggling with my own stuff and I needed that sensory input. More than anything, I needed that. So what I'd probably have to do is bring my weighted vest or, just to get that input because I need that. And I prefer the hug, but for me, that was the hardest thing, having you right there, not being able to snuggle or get a hug or anything like that. I didn't need to talk.
Yeah. I
didn't have a problem with the communication piece. I did have a hard time with not getting that touch, that input. So that for me was the hardest. I wouldn't even say dealing with the trauma that came up in my brain was as hard as that. That I was more seeking for comfort.
Yeah, it was fairly intense. And just to describe it for people, if you haven't done that before, and this is not a religious experience, right? Because there's no deity anybody's worshiping or anything like that. And I know that a lot of people have these notions that this is, is this Christian or, and it's nothing. It's none when it comes to that, because even one of our teachers or one of our leaders, also, attends, I don't want to say what they attend, but they attend, a non-denominational place of worship. So there are other paths that people walk. Yeah. And I do get the sense that there were probably there may have been Christians there with us, but this is
Yeah.
not in opposition to that.
Right.
To me, this is an enhancement. Even if you have, say, a Christian spiritual practice or a Jewish practice or a Muslim practice,
Whatever
I think these
practice,
things
yeah.
still support your faith,
Yeah.
your connection, right? Whether it's your connection with other people,
Can
with your
reinforce
spouse,
it, yeah.
your connection with a higher power, all these things come to bear when you are settled and you are not letting your thoughts run the show. And that's what this is all about. We've said it here before. The idea is to learn that your thoughts are going down this river and you're standing on the riverside watching them go, but you're not jumping in with them.
One of the Dharma leaders said to me, thought is a noun, thinking is a verb. You don't want to do the thinking. You just
Right.
want to look at the thoughts.
It's trying to create separation
It's
between
separating,
the thought
right.
and the observer, the observation of the
So
thought.
you're not thinking, you're
Right.
just having thoughts.
Right.
And obviously, you're human, so you're going to have thoughts. Nobody can avoid them.
And
You
that's
can-
awareness.
You
If
don't
you're aware,
clear your mind, right?
You're aware that you're having thoughts.
Yeah.
That's the first step.
You're aware of the thoughts. You don't want to label them. You don't want to judge them. You just want to be aware that you're having them. And that's what got tricky for me in about 48 hours. Like after the first 24 hours, I was like, oh, this is wonderful. I was meditating. I felt calm. It felt really good. Like I was like, I could do this. And by the middle of the second day, I started having really challenging thoughts. Like if you have any kind of trauma or experience that you've had that was traumatic in some way, and even though you feel like you may have processed it, well, they still come up. So
Yeah.
I learned that trauma over this weekend comes in layers, right? So you have the, whatever happened in your childhood, adolescence, teenage, young adult, and then up, and it's all layered. And I started having traumatic thoughts, but thoughts that were like disturbing, like someone was going to hurt everybody in the place because everybody was gathered in one place.
Yeah.
And so when you have all these people in one place, anybody, they could all get hurt at the same time. Right. And so I was having some really disturbing thoughts that started to bombard me. Like all of a sudden it felt like there was like a box or a jar that had a lid on it with all my trauma, and it started to heat up and heat up and heat up, and suddenly it got so hot it burst, and like a volcano it just came pouring out, and I couldn't be like, oh, there's a thought. I was like, all these thoughts, and I started to like the panic and the heart palpitations, and I was trying to all the strategies, like they're just thoughts. There is a heart palpitation. There is, this, there is that, but I had to literally get up and leave the space. And, that was, I mean, when I went into during the weekend, you had a counselor. So you had one counseling session. I actually had two because I was having so much trouble. So you're supposed to have just one counseling session. And I remember talking to the Dharma leader and I was like, this is what's happening. And I was in tears. I was really struggling emotionally, dealing with it all. It was very intense. And I knew it was unrealistic and unreasonable for me to think. Like I knew my brain was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is not going to happen. The chances of anybody getting hurt right now in this space is minimal. Like, I mean, it's like literally no chance. And, but my brain kept telling me something, I kept telling these contradictory thoughts. So it was difficult, but after the counseling session, I was better. He said, if you, need to not be in that space and you need to go someplace else and meditate, which is what I did. I walked up to the waterfalls, so calming. So I sat there probably for 45 minutes, just focusing on the sound with my eyes open, and just focusing on the water rushing. And it was very calming, very soothing. Then I went and did some movement. I was doing a lot of like body weight, movements, like mindful movement, so to yoga, really.
Yeah.
That helped a lot, but I didn't have anything to, not any weights to push or anything like that. So that was hard. And then that's why I came in to get hugs. Like when you came into the room, I just like ran over to you and just like, I was like, I need a hug, but I didn't say anything, but you just gave it to me. And I, that's what I need. I needed that. I needed that because I was struggling. And so that was my experience. And then by the end of the last day, we all did this sort of activity where everybody has an intention, thinks about their intention that they got from the experience. And, I did bring up terror. I was having terrorizing thoughts. And we were able to talk. And I said, I was having these terrorizing thoughts. I wasn't alone. So the idea that I wasn't the only person having these terrorizing thoughts kind of made me feel a little better, even though I wouldn't want somebody else to have them. I was like, okay, I'm not a freak, right? And so the other woman who was having them in that moment, and I could feel like her terror was palpable. Like for me, like she was across the room from me, and I could see and feel her terror. It was strong, and her whole body was shaking. And I don't even know how she stayed standing there. Like if I was having that kind of experience, I'm not sure I'd be able to stay in the room, but she did. And we did the circle. And my intention was to give the self grace and others. I think it was allow grace or give yourself grace and give others grace. And so that was basically my intention, because that's what the Dharma leader was telling me. Give yourself a break. You're allowed to have these thoughts. You're human. This is not, you don't want to force anything. Something's happening. You're having a visceral response to it. Understand that your body's having a visceral response to a thought, and just be aware and, take a deep breath. It will pass. And it did. But it was intense. It was intense. The first night I couldn't sleep at all for whatever reason. I wasn't sleeping. The second night I slept a little bit better. You're not supposed to read, but I did allow myself to read. He said, look, if you need to read to let yourself sleep and get a good night's sleep, it's more important that you sleep.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. I was kind of relieved about that, because I was like, how am I going to sleep? Like I need to even though you're supposed to be staying mindful, I needed that brain break.
Yeah.
You do need a break from your brain. I needed a break. And this was my first ever silent retreat. I've done a full day silent retreat. I loved it. I really enjoyed that. And I didn't need to journal. I thought I was going to have to journal. I didn't need to journal. And I journaled a little bit, but not a lot. I realized that I just wanted to kind of be inside my head. I didn't mind. At first I thought I was going to have to journal, but I didn't have to journal. But I did need to read. So. Yeah,
I saw you do that. So, of course, my intention is the title of this podcast, because one of the things that's held me back in my life is being afraid of others' reactions or what they think of me. So living for approval, wanting to be liked, those types of things really weighed heavily on me and stopped me from being my authentic self and living out what I thought was the right path and the best path for me. So in fact, the title of my book, The Everything Kid, is subtitled Letting Go of the Desire for Approval and Finding the Courage to Live for Me. So that courage is around this living authentically. And living for me is to me the very definition of being authentic, right? Not living for other people. So, but for me, what was impactful too were the metaphors that we were provided by each teacher. And I know on the first full day on Friday, the one that stuck with me was, we can't stop the waves, but we can learn how to surf them.
Right. And I kept thinking about that too, when I was having those really disturbing thoughts. I couldn't ride these waves. These waves were like tsunamis. And I was like, I'm going to drown. So I wasn't able, I tried that and I wasn't able to. What actually worked for me was metta. So I kept saying, may I be well, may everyone in this room be well, be safe, be healthy, be happy. And I kept just wishing metta on everybody and gratitude. When you're in a state of gratitude, you really can't be in a state of distress or anger or anything else when you're really in a state of gratitude. So I switched to, instead of just watching my thoughts, I switched to having a gratitude mantra. Thank you. Thank you for this moment. Thank you for whatever I was thankful for in my life, over the past 10 years. Like, I would go through this whole thing, and then I was going through the 8 C's. I am calm. I am compassionate. So allowing my mind to focus on certain things so that it helped me get past the disturbing thoughts. But that was, after maybe 3 or 4 sessions of really struggling, disturbing thoughts. That was because we meditated like probably 3 or 4 times a day.
Oh, at least, because there was walking
There
meditation.
were walking meditation.
There was silent meditation.
It didn't happen during the walking meditation. It only happened during the sits. So, yeah. And then all the pain, right? So when you have trauma brings pain to the body wherever you store that trauma. So, of course, my back and neck were on fire. I came in on the third day of the morning of the third day, and I just laid down. I laid out the pillows and I laid down. I was like, I'm not even going to try to sit up right now because my neck and back were on fire.
No, and that was part of the teaching also that we received is don't sit through pain. There's no good outcome from sitting there saying, I'm going to push through this pain.
Right.
It's going to interrupt your ability to meditate.
Yeah, I couldn't
effectively.
even. So I just laid down and I was like, oh, this is so much better. So
the other wonderful metaphor came on, actually, it was the first day. I think I got it backwards. Whatever. Was about the chick and how the chick inside the egg, right? We're talking about like a chicken chick and a little yellow fuzzy guy, right? In an egg shell.
Yeah.
And how it continues to grow and it's getting fuzzy and swings and the shell starts to crack because it's outgrowing the confined space that it's in. And the chick, as it knows it, as the world, as the chick knows it at that time, is getting ready to fall away. But when the world as a chick, or we know it, falls away, that doesn't mean things fall apart. Sometimes when things fall away, new things, we can make space for new things to come together. And that's how I took that. So he went on and was talking about the chick then is pushing out, pushing through those cracks. And then something I never knew is that the chick then has to eat its shell. So it has to eat this outer layer that's been confining it. So I realize in my life, I've always been afraid of eating the shell. I've always been afraid of, whatever I do with this protective coating I've got right now, whatever I think that security is, whether it's income from a job or someone being my friend or whatever the metaphor is for that, I've learned it doesn't matter because I've got to go through that process. Yeah. Sometimes you have to go through that process no matter how uncomfortable it is, because in order to grow, you have to shed that shell that's holding you back. That chick would not grow unless it broke through and ate that shell. Right. And so for me, the growth that I need to continue to have is going to come by doing new things and letting this, I remember Eckhart Tolle talking about the new heaven and the new earth, right? When the old heaven and the old earth pass away, right? Makes way for new. So this is everything. Even the chiropractor we go to is always talking about cell regeneration. Yes. Right. Your body is shedding these dead cells and is making new cells. And all the time. So this is this whole process. So it's not a process. If we try to fight against this process, that's where the suffering is, when we resist the process. Yeah. So I like to think my trauma was the shell and all the emotion was me eating the shell, right? I agree. Yeah. I mean, and so I'm grateful. I kept thinking, God, I wasted a whole weekend dealing with trauma. How frustrating, right? Because I just want to work on myself. Well, I was, that guy, that's what I was like, why am I still dealing with this crap? Right, but then that's the give yourself grace part comes in. Yes. Because when you say to yourself, why am I still dealing with this, right? Then you're putting yourself in that punishment mode, right? Yeah. It's also a great question to ask, why am I still putting myself through this? Why am I still resisting eating my shell? May be a fair question. Right. And that was one I had to come to grips with in
Well,
that
I was
moment
resisting.
and in the week.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I was resisting something because I think if I wasn't resisting, I would not have had such an intense experience where, I mean, I was like sobbing at one point at the end. And I don't know if that's just everything just burst out of me. Like I was trying to hold it in. And Larry said to me, don't be afraid to open the door. That was his intention for everybody. Don't be afraid to open that door. He told a story about a little kid going up in the attic. It's a famous story. And I remember like processing that story. And at the end, it was listening to everybody's intention started getting very emotional, like powerful, powerful things people thought. And you realize, oh my gosh, everybody's dealing with such challenging things in their lives. And there was how many people there? 40? 30 people in their intentions. And it was pretty powerful. And when he said to me, he was the last person to whisper that in my ear. That was his intention. Don't be afraid to open the door. Well, the dam burst and I lost my shit. I was like, I just started to sob.
Yeah.
And then I walked over to the other woman another Dom relator who was the one who was struggling with terror as well. And she said to me, I love your intention. Thank you for sharing that with me. That really did help. And I started crying even harder, so it was like really intensely emotional. But I feel like that was me, like the shell, just me eating the shell. Like I was just, everything was falling away. And the following day when I came home, I was miserable. I felt like I had, it was like a weekend bender. I mean, it was just, I felt awful. My body felt bad. I just was so fatigued.
Yeah, it was a week ago at this time that we got home.
Yeah, I was so fatigued. So for about a day and a half, I was really fatigued. I had a headache. I didn't feel well. I just didn't exercise. I was just like, I feel like really rough. And then I landed about 4 days. I remember John, one of the guys at the meditation where we go, and he said, how did you land? I'm like, it took me like 4 days to land. No, he goes, when did you land? I said, I landed about 4 days later. And immediately when he said that to me, I knew what he meant, meaning after, your body settles and you're able to kind of process everything, because it takes about 4 days. And people had said that to me. It's going to take about 4 days for you to process everything that happened this weekend. It's going to give you, give yourself a week to 4 days, 4 days to a week. And I was like, really? Yeah. 100%. It took me a good 4 days to really land. And I'm still processing stuff. I'm still, thinking about things. But it was like, I described it like having a really bad cold for like a month and you can't breathe and you're congested and you're like, and then finally one day you wake up and you can breathe. There's no more congestion. There's no more clogging. Your sinuses are clear. That's how it felt. On the fourth day, I felt like there's clarity. Like the dust has settled, whatever, like the clouds are moved away. There's no congestion. The air is clear. And I can see clearly, like the song, right?
No, that's a great metaphor.
So, yeah.
But for me, The Power of Intention, that's a book, I think, right?
That's Eckhart Tolle's book.
Or The Power
of Now.
Yeah, but The Power of Intention, I think, is another book. But how powerful it is to state your intention to other people. When I realize even the title of my book's an intention, which is in alignment with the intention that I made last week. Again, live authentically without fear. Now it becomes an accountability measure for myself. So now I have to look at everything, every decision I make, every action I take in my life now is in alignment with my intention, because if I'm out of alignment with my intention, I'm not going to be happy or satisfied. So now I can't not change where I need to change in alignment with that intention.
And you probably know where that feels like more closely.
I know what it feels like.
What it feels like.
I know what it feels like now to feel the empowerment and the power inside to say, no one can shake me from that. And I don't care. I'm not worried about the outcome of living authentically, because in the past I would worry, well, if I do this and they do this, like it's not a chess match. I have to stop looking at that and saying, well, I have to make this move because they'll make this move, or I have to anticipate this move. No, just live authentically. Who am I? What do I stand for? What are my beliefs? What are my convictions, my goals, my values? And live according to those and not worry about the outcome.
Yeah.
And solve for the process of developing into my highest and best version of myself and not worrying about what outcome that leads to, because I'm confident and I have faith in the outcome will be an outcome that I'm satisfied with. I don't want to say good outcome or bad outcome. That's subjective.
Yes.
But it's going to be an outcome I'm satisfied with because I didn't sacrifice myself in order to gain a particular outcome. So I just want to restate that for the people in the back.
Yeah.
If I live authentically without fear,
Yeah.
I know I will be satisfied with the outcome because I didn't sacrifice myself in the process.
Right. And I have to remember not to cling to the outcome, which is what I was doing. I was clinging to the idea of who I thought I was, who I expected myself to be, how I expected myself to engage or behave in a certain way, what I was supposed to look like, and that, I was supposed to be at a certain point after a certain amount of time. Like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I needed to, as soon as I let those things go, good things flowed in. I mean, things just flowed.
Yeah, you have to really let go of expectations.
You have to
whether
really
it's
let go.
Yourself, your children, your spouse.
It's
your
so hard because
people you work with.
It sounds like, oh yeah, I can. I don't expect. No,
It's not easy.
It's not easy because you want things to be a certain way,
Right.
and you strive for those things, and you strive. You put a lot of energy in to being a certain way, having certain level of education, knowing certain things, looking a certain way, having a level of fitness. I mean, knowing everything that you need to know. Well, and I never feel like I know everything I need to know, ever. But that's not a bad thing. I realize that's a good thing because that always keeps me hungry for more knowledge. And there's nothing wrong with that.
We say that where I work, hungry, humble, and smart, but...
Yeah, you want to, I mean, I'm always seeking to learn more. I'm always seeking to improve. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't cling to it. Don't cling to that, I'm good and I'm good. I'm more than enough. I am enough. I am enough. And we hear that all the time. But I needed to really go through that process to realize, no, I really am. Because I was like imposter, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm enough. Meanwhile, I really didn't believe it. I didn't believe it.
Right.
I didn't truly believe I've ever been enough. And so that was powerful. That's why the saying, give the self grace and give others grace. Because as much as I would judge myself and not give myself a break, I didn't do that for other people either.
Yeah.
I'm like, buck up, buttercup,
Yep.
right?
It goes both ways.
Yeah.
So I think we can wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to digest here for people. So for those watching, again, your intention
is to give grace to yourself and others.
And mine is to live authentically without fear. So if you got something out of this podcast, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button.
Don't be afraid to open the door.
Share this podcast video with other people. Visit our Instagram page at Personal Transformation EXP, or email us at changingtheworldwithinus@gmail.com. So again, hope this was impactful for everyone, and we will see you next time.